Now, at the time, the laws were such where we had to prove that an American was on American soil when they made the decision to go to another country and engage in these nefarious activities. There are people that go into those areas looking for more than just the average prostitute. And so we were asked to go in and try to identify Americans that were down there for the wrong reasons. So Will and I flew into Costa Rica. Welcome to another episode of the Liberating Humanity podcast. We're talking about operations, undercover missions, and rescuing trafficked children and taking down some really bad guys. This time I'm going to be talking about a couple operations that we did in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and in that region. These are separate operations, but they're all kind of tied in together, so I'm going to talk about them together. The first one is Costa Rica. Now, Costa Rica is one of my favorite countries. We've done a lot down there. We have a lot of healing retreats there. A lot of people go from the United States and they go down to Costa Rica to connect with nature, to release a lot of the crap that our day-to-day busy lives are piling up on us. But other people go to Costa Rica because of the fact that prostitution is legal. And in some areas that prostitution is legal, there's also problems with child trafficking. Now, fortunately, and this is kind of an interesting twist, the operations that I did in Amsterdam, for example, we had a really hard time finding children for sale. There was plenty of prostitutes because it's legal and it's fully controlled by the government. Now, some of you guys are going to get mad at me for this. I'm just going to tell you what I have seen firsthand. The places that prostitution is legal and controlled very tightly by the government, it's really difficult to find human trafficking and especially child trafficking. Why? Because the guys who are in the other countries that are selling the women who are doing illegal things, they're already kind of doing illegal stuff. They might as well do more illegal stuff. In these countries where it's controlled like this. Now, I don't know if some of these girls that say, even boys that say that they're, independent and they're working in these countries, they get blood tests every week. They pay their taxes and they're regulated very, very tightly in these countries. It's hard. It's hard to find kids for sale there. I know because I've done operations in a lot of these countries trying to find kids, and it's not as easy as the countries where everything's illegal and, Americans go down and doing illegal stuff in an illegal place. So it's an interesting dynamic. I'm just going to throw that out there so that you can kind of try to figure out what the best solution is here. I don't have a problem with grown adults doing grown adult things with other grown adults. I have no problem with that. Where I have a problem is any time that somebody, adult or child, is being controlled in any way. And I have a really big problem with a child being trafficked or sold anytime, even if a child is like, oh yeah, I'm 14 and I'm doing this on my own. No, they're being coerced. They're being controlled through fear, and somebody else is pushing the agenda there with those kids. And so anybody that's under 18 years old, in my opinion, is being trafficked if they're out there as a prostitute or being sold for sex, right? Because that's a different story, especially if they're the young ones. Now, when you get into the 25, 26-year-olds here in America, you're going to find that a huge percentage of them who say they're independent are not. I know this because we've helped a number of people get out of the sex trade that say, oh no, it's not like 50-50 of the ones that are out there on the street. It's more like 90-95% of the prostitutes that are in Los Angeles and New York and in Salt Lake City, all over the US, over 90 and 95% of the prostitutes in those cities here in the US are being trafficked, are being sold. So it's an interesting question that we have to ask ourselves. Is legalizing it and making sure that these people who are working in this trade are paying their taxes, or being tested all the time, or being interviewed by authorities to make sure they're not being sold or trafficked? Is that a good thing, a bad thing? I don't know. I'm leaving that up to you. My personal opinion is adults doing adult things together. That's their opinion. I'm not going to indulge in that. I'm in a very healthy, happy relationship. There's no reason to go that direction. But, there's plenty of people that are super happy in Thailand and in Amsterdam and in Costa Rica that are engaged in that. So we'll leave it at that. I will say this: people that go into these areas, into these cities, these countries, places like Amsterdam, places like Costa Rica, that prostitution is legal. There are people that go into those areas looking for more than just the average prostitute. And so we were asked to go in and try to identify Americans that were down there for the wrong reasons. And so in a country like Costa Rica, there's so much money that's coming in from taxation of the sex trade that we had a hard time getting authorization to go in and actually do a full sting. So we couldn't do a full rescue operation there. But what we could do is go in and identify some Americans that were down there for the wrong reasons. Now, at the time, the laws were such where we had to prove that an American was in America, on American soil, when they made the decision to go to another country and engage in these nefarious activities. And so step one was finding out which Americans were down there, creating a relationship with them, gathering contact information, reconnecting with them on U.S. soil, and then having a recorded conversation of them talking about wanting to go to another country to engage in sex with a minor. That's where we could catch them. Now, fortunately, that law has changed. Guys, today, and this is an amazing development. Today, the laws are such where if you go to another country, if you're an American and you go to another country and you have sex with a minor in that country, even if you don't get caught there, even if that country's laws are such where it's legal there, you have broken U.S. law. Now, this is awesome, because if you go rob a bank in another country, you'd have to get extradited back to that country to actually go to jail in that country. You don't go to jail in the U.S. for breaking and entering in another country. That's their laws. But when it comes to children, the U.S. laws have changed so that all we have to do is prove that you went to that other country and engaged in that activity with a child. And the second you come back into American soil, you can be arrested. And you can, even if you get arrested in that other country and you go to jail for, let's say you only go to jail for a month or two there, whatever it is, the second you back to the US, you get arrested here. And you're going to pay the full penalty of engaging in sex with a minor anywhere in the world. That's a beautiful advancement on US law. Now, back then, when I first did this up, we didn't have that law in place yet. And so we were asked to go down and try to identify Americans that were in Costa Rica that were down there for the wrong reasons, that were down there with children. And so I went down with a detective. We'll call him Will. And Will and I went down, and I won't tell you his whole name because I think he's still undercover as a detective, but he's an amazing man. And we were working with one of the previous foundations that I had started with in the beginning. And so Will and I flew into Costa Rica. We started out in San Jose. We were talking to a couple people there, and we found that a lot of the trafficking and the possibility of child trafficking was going on in a place called Jaco Beach. Now, Jaco Beach is a beautiful little beach town, and there's only two reasons to ever go to Jaco Beach. Number one, if you're a pro surfer, there's some great surfing, but it's kind of up the beach a little bit. In Jaco Beach itself, when we were there, in maybe an 8 to 10 block area, there were thousands of prostitutes. They were everywhere, on every street corner, on every alley, in every bar, everywhere there was prostitutes. Now, our goal, of course, is to not just find guys that are down there with prostitutes, but find out if there's any kids that were being sold down there. So we walked around kind of the beach area. We talked to a couple people that were there. We met a lady, a madam, that had a bunch of girls that were with her. They told us they were all over 18. Some of them looked a little bit younger than that. We exchanged some contact information with her just in case, but really there was nothing we could do there. We couldn't rescue the kids. We couldn't do a sting operation because we didn't have the authorization from the government to even be there doing all this stuff. What we were looking for was Americans. So we found there was a place. There's a place called Hotel Cocal. It's right in the middle of Jaco Beach. And in this hotel, there's this center area that has a couple swimming pools that were there. And all of the rooms all face inwards. And it's multiple stories. All the rooms are facing inwards. And in a quiet time, maybe 10 in the morning, maybe noon, you'll find 30 to 50 prostitutes that were in that area. In 10 o'clock at night, in a hot time of the night, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, there are hundreds, maybe 300 or more prostitutes, maybe 400 or more that are in this pool area. And what happens is these Johns, these Americans will come down and they'll rent rooms in this hotel and they'll open the door. Some girls will be there. They get to pick whoever they want to. They take them into their room. They come back out, get a drink, find some other girls, go back in. It is disgusting. It's disgusting is the only word for it. So we went in there and we're trying to find out which Americans are there and what they're there for. And we sit down at this table, this big round table that was there in near the pool area. And I should probably short the stock of this company I'm going to tell you about right now before this goes public, because this is crazy. But I'm just going to tell you exactly what we saw and what happened, okay? So we're there. I should have recorded this. If I was there and I had a recording of this, I could show you guys how disgusting this conversation was. So we're sitting at this table and there's a bunch of guys that were there. And again, the only reason to be there is to engage in prostitution, to engage in sex with these women. That's the only reason that you're there in Jaco Beach, the only reason. And for sure, the only reason that you're there at Hotel Cocal. That's the only reason, right? And so we're sitting there at this table, and there was a bunch of Americans that were there. And we asked them, what are you down here for? Oh, we're just partying, having a good time, you know? And they showed us some of the rooms. Yeah, I'm in that room there and whatever else. It was a sex party with these guys. And then I asked them, I said, guys, what are you just a bunch of friends? I mean, how come you're down here? You know, what are you guys doing? They said, oh no, this is a work trip. I said, it's a work trip? Yeah. We're all the top performers in our company. And as the top performers in our company, they sent us on a trip here to Jaco Beach. It's only guys though. We let all of our wives, all they stayed home. We told them all, hey, this is just a guy's trip for all of the top salespeople in our company. I said, really? What company do you work for? They said, John Deere. I'm like, are you kidding me? John Deere sending their top sales guys to Jaco Beach, Hotel Cocal. The only reason to be there is prostitution, right? That's the only reason to be there. Now, I don't know who made that decision at John Deere. Maybe it was just the top guys. I don't know. But somebody decided that they were going to have their company trip, the reward trip for their top performers at a place where they could all go get whacked. They could all go get girls, as many as they wanted to. That made me sick. What kind of country do we live in where some of the biggest, most respectable companies in this country are sending their top performers to a place to go engage in prostitution and telling their wives, oh, we're just going on a business trip? Really? Really? We've got a problem. And it starts with us getting real about what we're doing and why we're doing it. Why in the world would they be sending these guys to Jaco Beach? That's a big problem. So we gathered information a couple guys that were there, exchanged some contact, but really they weren't down there for kids. They weren't doing anything illegal. They were doing something seriously immoral in that most of them were married and that they were on a work trip there to Jaco Beach, really, but they weren't doing anything illegal. And so we needed to find some guys that were down there looking for kids. So we went to this other kind of a sports bar area. There were some blackjack tables, some places people were playing poker and stuff. And so I thought, you know what, here's an opportunity to be able to connect with some of these guys and find out if they're here for the wrong reasons, et cetera. So we're sitting there around this table and we're playing 21 with a couple guys. And I start the conversation with them about why they're down there. And they're like, yeah, we're just down here for some, there's plenty of girls here. That's why we're here. Is we're down here for the sex. It's all about the sex. And I said, well, I'm trying to probe them to see if they are just having sex with older prostitutes or if they're there for other reasons. So I asked them, I said, hey, have you guys ever been to Bangkok, Thailand? I said, you can get anything you want in Bangkok. And the guy's like, oh, yeah. He says, you can get anything you want here. I said, really? Where do you get that? He goes, oh, yeah, we had some parties and stuff. And he said, but I'd love to go to Bangkok. I've never been. I said, well, we should plan a trip. I go there all the time. I'm building a relationship with these guys because if over time I find out that they're going there to Costa Rica or to Bangkok, Thailand to engage in sex with children, now we have a problem. So again, the key is getting all their contact information, building a relationship with them. These are Americans down there. And the conversation started going to the fact that indeed they would be interested in going to Thailand and not just for 20, 25-year-old prostitutes. They were interested in going there to engage in sex with children. Now that's a lead. That's a lead with an American. Now we have to be able to get them back on U.S. soil and have them say what they're going to do because we couldn't do anything down there at the time because that's where the laws were. And so then we're in the middle of this conversation and one of them ends up ordering drinks. He goes, hey, let's get shots for everybody. And we're not talking little shots. We're talking shots, these big ones. Now, at the time, I had spent most of my life in a religious background where I had not tasted alcohol at all, right? But I couldn't really say, yeah, we're down here looking for parties with kids, but I don't drink, I couldn't really say that. So they give us this alcohol, and I didn't know in these situations if we're given something by a trafficker, by a perpetrator, whatever else, and I don't know who made that drink, that could be a very dangerous situation as well. So in some cases, if you can, you kind of pour it out over your shoulder or set it aside. There's a lot of different techniques that we have used over the years to get out of drinking something that was presented to us. But in this situation, it was right out there in the open. These guys are all looking. He's like, 1, 2, 3, go. And I'm like, yeah. So I take it. Now, I have a lot of unique skill sets that make me somewhat safe in a dangerous place. One of my skills, which is kind of crazy, but it is what it is I can, without touching the back of my throat, without trying to whatever, I can walk up to a sink or a toilet, whatever, at any time and squeeze my stomach muscles and remove everything in my stomach. Now, no, I'm not a bulimic. I don't, eat and throw it up and whatever else, but it's a skill that I have. And it's worked really well a few times. I remember one time when we were building our bridge, our company, and we had gone, Don and I were at a couple meetings in Southern California, and we had a guy who we went to this amazing lunch with him, and he was going to be investing with us, and we both ate, and we had just barely had another breakfast appointment, and so we were full. And then we realized, holy crap, our next appointment is a guy who owns a restaurant, and he's an executive chef. And he's so excited about us coming so that he can try all this stuff. And both of us were stuffed. We couldn't fit another bite in. I said, Don, I'll take care of it. We'll go there, we'll talk. I'll eat my stuff and I'll eat yours. He said, how are you able to do that? I said, just pull over, I'll show you. So he pulls over the car. I open up the door. I don't touch the back of my throat. I don't do anything. I just open up the door and emptied everything. I know this is gross as crap, guys, right? I just emptied everything and boom, I was good to go for the next meeting, right? And so fast forward, here I am in Costa Rica, and I just took this massive shot, And I didn't know if there was something in it or not in it. I don't want to trust them. So I said, hey guys, great. Hey, save my place here. I'm going to go use the restroom real quick. You good with that? Yeah, yeah. So they're holding my place for me, and I go to the restaurant. I go in there, 100% everything out. I don't even get red eyes half the time, right? Just push the stomach muscles, push everything out, and I come back out and I'm good to go. And whether there was something spiked in that drink, whether it was just the alcohol that would make me whatever, I don't know. But I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm compromised in being able to talk with these guys. And so we finished the game. I exchanged some contact information with these guys. And then me and my operator went outside and we started talking to some other guys. We met a guy by the name of Bo. And Bo was pretty young. He was probably in his mid to late 20s. And he was there and he was drunk. And was talking about all this stuff that he'd been doing, parties. And so I started talking to Bo and come to find out, yeah, Bo's there for the wrong reasons. He had been to a bunch of parties, not just with prostitutes. Bo was talking about the last party he went to. They had sheep. They had sheep at the party. That was part of the orgy that they were having. They have girls over here. They have sheep over here. I'm like, this guy's sick, right? And so in talking to him about his sick fantasies and stuff, I asked him, I said, so have you ever been with children? He goes, no, yeah, I want to. Yeah, that sounds fun. That would be tight, And this guy was sick. But we needed to get him to say these things on U.S. soil. So I exchanged some contact information with him and said, hey, we'll stay in touch because it'd be super fun to schedule a party somewhere. Maybe we'll go to Bangkok together, et cetera. And so we flew back to the U.S. after that. Well, about 2 weeks later, we were doing an operation. I believe we were in Haiti at the time. And we happened to be flying back into the U.S. on a private plane. The Homeland Security agent that I was working at the time, he really liked flying private on these things and bringing in some of the donors and everything else. And so I had paid for the fuel in the flight of this plane to go into Haiti to do some of the things that we were doing there. Well, on the way back, we had to stop somewhere to refuel and to come in through customs into the U.S. Well, this Bo guy happened to live in a city that was convenient for us to land on our way in and refuel. So that's what we did. We landed in U.S. soil, and I had texted him. I said, hey, we're going to be coming into your city. I don't remember where it was. It was Shreveport, Louisiana, I think. It was somewhere down there. But we were coming into somewhere in the Gulf, and we landed in that city. And I told him, hey, meet me at the Millionaire terminal. And he sees this jet coming in, and I told him, like, I'm there with my boss, and he's setting up some parties and whatever else. And so this guy comes and meets us. We have a gal that was there that was an actress that posed as my girlfriend, as we're setting up this thing so that she could be there and see the conversation. And we had some undercover cameras, et cetera, that were recording that conversation with this guy so that we could then turn it in to U.S. authorities and get him arrested. So it wasn't a huge sting operation with a whole bunch of kids, but we got information on the guys who were wanting to go to Bangkok. We got information on this guy named Bo and turned that into the authorities, et cetera. And we found out the screwed up crap that some of our American companies are sending some of their top sales agents on a guys only trip to a place known for prostitution. So that was a win on that trip. Now, Costa Rica, number 2. This was fun. This was kind of a fun operation. You guys have seen me on this together with Glenn. In fact, we're going to have him on a couple other podcasts. He's an amazing operator, huge heart, and fearless. This guy is fearless. He runs an organization now called Sentinel and doing a bunch of podcasts. You should tune into his stuff. We had another guy by the name of A-Rod. And A-Rod had worked in narcotics undercover in Latin America for a number of years. Both of these guys were somewhat disenfranchised with the former Homeland Security agent and that foundation, et cetera. And they're like, I really want to do operations, but there's a lot going on there that I don't agree with. Well, I had agreed at this point, to pay for a lot of the pre-ops. What had happened is that former foundation, they were worried that the pre-ops were too dangerous. They wanted to just come in with the cameras at the day of the rescue and share the story with the public, which is great. That was needed. But in order to get to that point, you had to do a lot of dangerous stuff. And they were worried. They were worried that there's a possibility that they could lose an operator and that would hurt their foundation, which is true. We did. We had one operator that was stabbed over 20 times in Dominican Republic. We had another operator that was killed in Haiti. And so this is dangerous, really dangerous stuff. And so they didn't want to have anything to do with the pre-ops. So I agreed. I said, you know what, guys, I'll pay for those and I'll go on those. I'll help lead those operations. And those are some of the stories that you've been hearing now. Well, some of these guys said, hey, you know what? We want to follow up with some leads, but we need somebody that can help fund it. I says, you know what? I'll help with that. I'm good with that. You know, you tell me what you need and we'll be there. Well, this operation, one of the operators was I think they call them the Black Hats. And this guy is badass. And I'm not going to tell you his name because he has to stay anonymous. But the Black Hat organization are guys that they have a competition every year to find out who the best hackers are. And these guys are the best of the best in their dark web hacking and everything else. They're really, really good. Some of these guys are the ones that they took down the Ashley Madison site. They do highly illegal things for the right reasons, right? They took down the Ashley Madison site and exposed all the guys who were cheating on their wives. Good for them. Good for them, right? And so they kind of work around the law or against the law, but it is what it is. And one of them had been doing some dark web stuff in which he would go and find child pornography sites, and he would hack into the computers that were hosting them, and he would completely destroy those computers from the inside out. And this guy is badass. I mean, he is so good that he could hack into a computer and look at the camera from the other side. Yes, I keep a piece of tape on my camera. Why? Because I know it's possible to hack into your computer and be able to see what's going on in your room from the inside of your computer, right? So these guys are good. And they do, like I say, they do illegal things for the right reasons. What are the illegal things? Hacking into a computer and destroying the hard drive because it's carrying child pornography. I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that, right? So there was a guy, we're going to call him Bruno. Bruno had been on the FBI wanted list for a long time. He had raped well over 100 children in Latin America. He was an American citizen, but he was really good at staying anonymous. Every single time he logged into any of his social media, he came on using a VPN through multiple firewalls, all this stuff. So he was good. It was almost impossible to be able to figure out where he was living and where he was logging in from, all of that stuff. Well, my Black Hat friend, this super hacker, he went in and through all of the pictures on this guy's social media, he was able to find one that way in the distance of this picture, you could see the edge of a Hooters sign. He said, okay, I'm going to take that and I'm going to take all the other things that are in this picture. And he then did this full web research thing where he tracked everything across the web and wrote this special program that was able to identify that Hooters sign was in Costa Rica. He's like, got this guy. He's been the FBI, the Feds, Homeland Security. These guys have been after this guy for 10 years. He was selling children to Americans as they came down. In fact, he was bragging on some of his media sites, online sites. He was bragging how he could get a child, not even a trafficked one, a child that at a mall, that he would go to the malls and he would meet these kids and he would give them a business card that he was a professional photographer and he could help them become famous, right? So he gives them these business cards and then he gets them to come and do these photo shoots. And he was bragging that he could get these kids to remove their clothes in an average of 3 photo shoots and then to get them to engage in sex soon thereafter, because then he had naked pictures of him and he used that as leverage against him, saying, hey, you don't want this stuff to get out, I'll keep it super private if you do this and that. So this guy was an evil man. I'm just going to call him an evil fuck. You know, you can edit that out, but this guy was a bad dude and he needed to be taken down. And it was super frustrating that the federal government was 10 years and haven't been able to find him. So sure enough, our black hats, you know, our super hacker guys who go in and take down these child porn sites and everything else, they were able to identify where he was. In fact, they were able to identify exactly where that picture was taken. And so they said, we want an op. We want to go down and see if we can find this guy. Great, we'll go. So I paid for it, paid for the plane tickets with these guys, paid for the Airbnb. We flew in and we got an Airbnb for a week in this area. That's like 4 or 5 days actually in this area that he had taken that picture. And from there, we went and started talking to some people. We went into this cigar club in the area and we're just kind of asking about him and seeing if they knew this friend of ours that we thought moved to that area, et cetera. And in the process, our guys that were doing the hacking were trying we got to a place where it was in the same area as the Wi-Fi network that this guy had been logging into. So they go in and they find out that we find out that he wasn't there anymore, that he had moved a couple months before. So they went on and they found, somebody said there that he had moved to Nicaragua. And so we're like, okay, there's a lead. We can work with that. So they went on to his social media and they found all of his friends that lived in Nicaragua. So he had friends from all over the world, but there were a few of them. There's about 5 or 6 that lived in Nicaragua. And it just so happened that these guys all lived in the same little town in Nicaragua. How do we know that? Because they were able to go in, and these guys weren't as diligent as he was in signing in with a VPN. He was, every single time he got online, he was super careful, but his friends weren't as careful. So they were able to find out, hey, it just so happens we've got 5 guys who are logging in, their IP address on their computer is all in this same little town in Nicaragua. We're like, there we go. There's where he is, that little town right there. And so we give up the Airbnb for the rest. I said, I don't care about, I already prepaid for it. I don't care. We're buying plane tickets. Boom, we're going to go find this guy. So we did. We flew into Nicaragua. Now, just like Costa Rica, we didn't have federal authorization from the government there in Nicaragua to do a full sting. We weren't going to do a sting. We needed to find this guy and turn over the information to Homeland Security or the FBI or whoever could go in and take him down. But if we could find him, we were going to save hundreds and hundreds of children from being abused in the future. So we fly in, we meet with this taxi driver. And this guy claims to know everybody and everywhere, you know, and I think it was Managua that we first flew into. And he took us to a couple clubs and whatever else, and we had him take us down to this little town area. And we're there trying to connect with these guys that were friends with him that we found out on social media. So a couple of these guys had been logging in using an IP address that we could track to a specific sports bar in the area. So now our goal was to find out what that sports bar was. And plus these guys had a couple pictures with themselves, with some selfies, with some lights behind them. So we could tell it was a sports bar that they were in as well. And this was a little town. So it wasn't like there was hundreds of bars around there. We just had to drive around and find that. Well, as we were driving around and walking around, one of the people that I met was a 13-year-old girl who was 8 months pregnant. She was a prostitute. She was being trafficked, but after she got pregnant, you know, now a lot of these kids, they make them get abortions and whatever else and keep them working. This one, for some reason, they're like, okay, you're no good to us anymore and let her go. But she didn't have a family. She didn't have support. And she was 8.5 months pregnant. She was ready to pop. And she was a tiny, tiny little girl. I mean, her belly was as big as the rest of her body combined. And so we talked with her a little bit, trying to find out who was controlling her before, who the traffickers were in the area. And what I ended up doing is actually taking her to a pharmacy and bought Pampers, bought a whole bunch, because she was ready to give birth, literally within a few weeks. So we filled up her her whole cart with Pampers and with baby formula and some baby clothes and some binkies, stuff like that, because it was sad. It was sad seeing this little girl, 13 years old, barely 13. She got pregnant when she was 12. And then she said that she had gotten pregnant from one of the customers that was with her. Super sad. And so we continued walking around. We ended up finding this sports bar, the same one that these friends of this Bruno guy had been logging into. And so as we go into this sports bar, now, one of my special skill sets that I'm really, really, really good at is being able to go into an environment with complete strangers and become really good friends with them fairly quickly. This is what worked very, very well on a lot of these undercover operations, is being able to come in and identify the mark and become that mark's best friend. Help them feel super comfortable with you. And I used it throughout my business career as well. Now, it wasn't, undercover and, pretending to be a friend. Some of my best friends are some of my investors in the fund today. But how I met them is I prided myself in being able to go into a room, identify the guys who could make the biggest investment in the fund, and become close friends with them fairly, fairly quickly. In fact, a couple examples of that. I remember I was in Laguna Beach, at the Montage in Laguna Beach. And I was at this conference. There was a few hundred ultra wealthy investors that were there. Now, a lot of the guys that were there were just attorneys that were representing a wealthy family. And some of them were just CPAs that were representing a wealthy family. But then some of them were really the money. And my goal when I go into a room like that is to look around and try to find out who the real decision makers are, who the real money is. So I'm looking at their watches, I'm looking at their shoes, I'm looking at how they handle themselves, et cetera. And usually the guys that are buttoned up with the ties and everything else, now they work for somebody with money. The guys with money, they're in the t-shirts, right? Or if it's a situation like that where you have to somewhat dress up, they're dressed down a little bit, but you can tell by their attitude and their energy. Well, one of the guys that was there was this Asian guy. This Asian guy had long, straight hair. He had big Coke bottle glasses, kind of shorter. And he had on his arm one of the most beautiful women that I had seen in a long time. She was actually on the cover of Elle magazine that month. She was on the cover of 5 different international modeling magazines within the last couple months before this, right? So as I'm looking around, someday I'm going to write a book on how to raise billions of dollars in an investment fund. And I'm going to have a whole chapter called Follow the Supermodel She Always Knows, right? Because if you've got that girl, and he wasn't ugly, but he was a little short, long hair, big glasses, whatever. So I'm like, that's the guy with the money. That's the jackpot right there, that guy. Now, I can't just walk up and say, hey, you got a really, really hot girlfriend. You must be rich. I can't really say that. I've got to figure out how to break the ice with him in a way where he can feel comfortable just talking to me. And so I'm thinking about it. I'm watching him for a minute. And then he gets up and they get up together and they walk out front. And he pulls out this tag. They're going to leave. I'm like, crap, he's going to leave. I've got to figure out something to talk to this guy. So I walk out there and I realize, you know what? I've got a tag for my car too. Now, I was just barely starting the fund at this time, right? We didn't have a nice car. I had a cheap rental car. And I pull out the ticket and I thought, okay, he's going to hand his ticket. I'll hand mine. And while we're both sitting there waiting for our cars during the uncomfortable silence, I'll break out a conversation. I'll ask him why he's there and tell him a little bit of my elevator pitch of what we're doing in the fund, et cetera. So that's what I do. And I hand in the ticket. And then I'm thinking, oh, crap. I hope they bring his Lamborghini before they bring my $2 Hyundai, right? And so we're sitting there talking, and sure enough, I was able to break the ice, get his contact information, build a relationship with him within 2 minutes that he invited me to his house to share some more information about our investment fund later that afternoon. So that was kind of fun. And there's hundreds of examples of that. I mean, you go into a room and there's a guy who was one of the original founders of Yahoo that was there, and they're in a circle around. Everybody's talking stories and they're listening to him, and I find out who he is. Well, I want to tell a story that's going to intrigue him, but I'm talking to somebody else, but really I'm talking to him, right? So I'm telling somebody else a little bit about what we're doing with the rescue missions and our charity and whatever else. And he's like, hey, I would love to learn more about that. Oh, really? Yeah. And who are you? I knew exactly who he was, right? Build a relationship with him. And now we're close friends today, et cetera. So this was a skill set I used in developing relationships with the right people that ended up helping us build our fund, our investors in the fund. Some of my best friends came from breaking the ice in this way. Well, it's a skill set that I used undercover as well. And so here we were. We're in Nicaragua, in this little town outside of Managua, and we found the place where this Mark, where he had been hanging out with some of his friends. And I had a list of his friends. I had pictures of all of them, so we knew what they looked like. And our goal, our hope, was that some of them would show up that night at that sports club. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. 3 of them showed up at the sports bar. I'm like, yes, those guys are the guys. Now, if you suck at undercover work, if you suck at breaking the ice, then you blow that cover. But instead, I was there. That was the only reason I was there to help fund it as well. But my real skill set isn't what these Navy SEALs and Green Berets. These guys are badasses. I'm good at talking. On these operations, my goal is to talk. Their goal is to keep me not dead. And that worked really, really, really well. So I go in there. I start talking to these guys and just shooting back and forth, asking them what team they're watching, asking what they're drinking, just building a relationship with them. And then as the relationship continues throughout the evening, we start talking about sex. We start talking about girls. We start talking about other things like that. And I tell him, I said, yeah, we're down here trying to find, things we can't find in the US, whatever. And they said, oh, yeah, you want some minors? Our friend Bruno, that's what he does. I said, really? No, that's exactly where we wanted this to go. A warm introduction from his friends that were living there to this guy that the feds have been looking for 10 years. It was literally 3 days into this operation, and we had connected with his friends at a place because they had been logging in without a VPN, and we knew exactly where they were logging into. This is cool undercover work right here with guys who really know how to do lots of different skill sets here, right? We've got the skill sets of the security guys and make sure we don't die. We've got the skill sets of the black hat guys who can hack into everything and find out where everybody is. This is super fun stuff, right? And so they say, yeah, we'll introduce you to this guy, but he's gone. We're like, gone? Yeah, he's going to be gone for about 2 weeks. He's on a vacation. We're like, crap, we wanted to know this guy now. They said, but, he does have a friend. They told us about his friend. He lives down here. You can talk to him. And we said, great. Yeah, we'd love to talk to him while we're down here. They said, yeah, maybe he can help you. And then through his friend and that warm introduction, we were able to find out the exact location where this Bruno guy was living. So we rented an apartment straight across the street from it. And we set up cameras there in the apartment so you couldn't see across the street that was catching everything that was going on. We tied it into the internet that was there so that it could be controlled and viewed remotely. And over the next few weeks, we had to fly out of country, but over the next few weeks, sure enough, this guy came back and we were able to capture all the evidence of this guy, of girls that he had been bringing in, children that he was bringing into his place, all of this evidence we were able to gather, turn that in to Homeland Security and the FBI so that then they could go in and do their job. Because now they could come into this country and say, hey, that guy's an American, he's raping children, he's ours. More than what we could do in a country that we didn't have authorization to be there. But we set everything up where this guy could be taken down and hundreds and hundreds of children could be protected from ever being abused in the first place moving forward in the future. So I know this was just a little tight. We didn't have a big sting operation there, but personally, I feel those were successes, a huge success to take down a pedophile that even the federal government couldn't find for 10 years. But some of our operators who do somewhat illegal things for the right reasons were able to go in, find out exactly where he was, exactly where his friends were. And together with our combined skill sets, were able to take down him in his operation so that those children are safe in that region. I'm Paul Hutchinson. This is the Liberating Humanity podcast. Super grateful for your time listening today and hearing of some of these stories. Hopefully you can gain not only a wow, that was super fun, they were taking down that guy, but hopefully you can take for some knowledge that you can keep your family safe, that we can make the world a better place together by eradicating this evil from the face of the earth. Thank you for joining the Liberating Humanity podcast. Please share this with your friends. Please click on the like button and let's figure out how to liberate humanity from this evil. Thank you.